Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1244, September 18th, 2020, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's go ahead and cover the last 24 hours of Spygate news. Before I get started on that, I just want to say to everyone that Chris No Shit Sherlock Ray, FBI Director Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, sucks. Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray sucks. Now, let's get on with the Spygate news. First, I want to follow up a little bit on what I was talking about yesterday with Gina Haspel. Of course, we learned yesterday that Gina Haspel had gone to Attorney General Barr after he put Durham in to investigate the investigators, and she went to Barr and tried to convince him that that was not a good idea and that he shouldn't do it or whatever. And, of course, he didn't listen. He went ahead and put Durham to work, and they're investigating that now. And I finished off that segment by saying that it was impossible, nearly impossible, as best as I can imagine, that the station chief in London in 2016, Gina Haspel, did not know what was going on in London or in and around London in 2016 with Halper and Downer and Misfit and Papagalopoulos and all these other people. Certainly she would have known. And there's a little more evidence to back that up. We learned about a year ago that the CIA director, station chief in London, has a regular monthly and sometimes bi-monthly, and even sometimes more often than that, briefing with British intelligence and other high government officials. They have meetings to discuss intelligence matters that are of interest to both the United States and the UK. So we know that there were regular meetings between Haspel and British intelligence. Regular meetings. We also know, because we learned months ago, that Christopher Steele himself had briefed officials in the British intelligence officials. He had briefed them as well on two occasions that we know for sure of. So if Christopher Steele is briefing intelligence officials in the UK, in Great Britain, on the Trump-Russia situation, and Gina Haspel is having regular meetings with British intelligence officials, it's impossible to believe that this would not have been discussed. Gina Haspel needs to be called in front of a committee publicly and ask these questions. It almost seems like they're protecting her. That's what it looks like. So, like I said yesterday, impossible that Gina Haspel did not know what was going on in London in those months between March and July of 2016. Nearly impossible. She would have been briefed. Now, I don't know how many of you have noticed Attorney General Barr, in the past 3 weeks, he's been giving a lot of interviews, more than he ever used to give. And in every one of these interviews, they always ask him about Durham, about the investigation. They ask him about a lot of things. But he has been literally, in the last 3 weeks, on a tear. He's clearly getting very ticked off. I mean, you can tell. I mean, he's about on the edge of his rope with these people. And he gave a speech at Hillsdale College the other night, which was pretty explosive. He's saying a lot of things right now. He's starting to become very Trump-like. He's saying a lot of things. I mean, when he first took over and throughout this period of time up until about 3 weeks ago, he's been pretty quiet and pretty reserved. But the last 3 weeks or so, Barr has been doing a lot of interviews, and he's been getting pretty testy. If you saw the interview with Wolf Blitzer, he got very testy with Blitzer. He's not taking a lot of bullshit. There's a little bit of Trump wearing off on Barr. You saw that interview with Pete Williams when he tried to push Barr on the Durham investigation. And Barr said, I'm not going to promise that I'm not going to bring indictments. And he's like, why are you saying that there may be? And Barr's like, yeah, well, there may be. Then, of course, he gives this speech at Hillsdale College, very fiery speech, says a lot of controversial things. And, of course, then we just learn that he had had a conference call with a bunch of U.S. attorneys and told them that they should prosecute some of these violent rioters under the Sedition Act. And then we learn that he talked to these prosecutors, I think it's either Oregon or Washington, talked to them about this mayor, Jenny Durkin, the Jerkin Gherkin, about possibly looking at pursuing her on criminal charges. So clearly, Attorney General Barr, I've just noticed the last 3 weeks, I don't know how many of you have noticed this, but he's definitely upped his game. And it may have something to do with the fact that he's now personally under attack. He's now feeling the type of heat, and he's seeing something being done to him that was exactly what was done to Trump, exactly what was done to Papadopoulos, Michael Flynn, and all the rest. It's now happening to him because, of course, as many of you probably know, or if you don't know, I'm about to tell you, the Democrats have been successful at getting the Inspector General, Huckleberry Horowitz, to launch an investigation into Attorney General Barr over his supposedly interfering in the Roger Stone situation. So clearly he's irked, and he talked about that in that Hillsdale College speech. He didn't specifically name names and things, but you know what he's talking about. He's talking about the fact that he, the head of the Justice Department, is now being politically targeted. Politically targeted. And so now I think that it's finally kind of hit home base with him, and he is now finding himself under investigation, a faux investigation, by the way, that he's finally starting to experience what it's like to have the power of the government turned on you, and he's the Attorney General. and they're turning it on him. And believe me, if they thought that they could find anything to impeach him over, they would. He knows that too. And he knows as soon as he comes out and issues an interim report or drops indictments on some more of these people, that they're immediately going to call for more investigations into him. They're going to want impeachment hearings. And if the Democrats win and hold on to the House, or even if they hold on to the House, you can bet the first thing that they'll do as soon as they reconvene after the first of the year is go after Barr for impeachment on him. So he knows. So now he is personally now in the target, in the crosshairs of these radical leftists. So he's definitely feeling it firsthand. And you can see that he's not reacting to it very well because for the past 3 weeks, he's definitely bringing a lot more game to the table in these interviews. You can tell he's pissed. And he's not putting up with the bullshit anymore. And this, I think, will only invigorate him even more to bring the criminals to justice. I mean, they're screwing around with this guy, and he's got the authority to drop the hammer on these guys. So it's a dangerous game that these people are playing. It's a dangerous game that everybody's playing right now. There's a lot of things going on, I think, even behind the scenes that we don't even know about, having to do with getting Trump removed from office, and that would include Barr and Durham and the whole 9 yards. It's like they're all together in a way. Barr understands that going after Trump, they're going after him too. It's not just Trump, it's him. And it's everyone who thinks like them, everyone who's conservative, anyone who's part of Trump's administration is considered in the crosshairs. So Barr is definitely feeling the heat, but it's good to see, unlike Sessions or unlike some attorney generals who would cower and go hide in a corner, Barr is taking the Trump way of doing things, which is to challenge these people right to their face and to come back at them really hard. So it's good to see this kind of fire and passion coming out of Barr, and it gives me a little more confidence that he is actually going to hold these people accountable. If he believes that he can, find the criminal violations, I have no doubt that he's going to prosecute these people. But he understands that when he does it, they better have all their ducks lined up in a row. Cannot have any missteps, because they're going to be targeted. He and Durham, along with Trump and everyone around them who's part of this Durham investigation, are going to be targeted big time. And they're going to come after him with everything they've got. And Barr knows it. So does Durham. So you got to be tough to be in this game now, because there's a lot on the line. There's a whole lot on the line. But yeah, it is good to see the fire coming from Barr. And it does give me some confidence that he's now getting a taste of what it's like to be on the receiving end of tyranny. And hopefully that will be a motivating factor for him to take the required action, which is to put the criminals in jail. All of them. So we had Ron Johnson go on to Fox News with Bret Baier. And he tells Bret Baier that he now has an informant. And this is someone who apparently was in these secret society meetings. Do you remember back when we had the Strzok page text where Strzok makes a joke to Lisa Page about, this is right after Trump wins the election, and Strzok makes a joke about Lisa Page telling her, well, you may want to think twice about sending out those calendars. And what he's talking about is, I guess, these functions that these people get together and have these functions or meetings or whatever. And Lisa Page responds by saying, yeah, we could call it the first meeting of the secret society. And so Ron Johnson, if you remember, back in 2018, when that first came out, he came out and was talking about it, and he got, abused in the press and took a lot of heat. So he probably feels pretty vindicated right now, because now he's telling Bret Baier of Fox News that he does have an informant. And he's talking about someone who would have been in those secret society meetings. And he's telling Bret Baier that there were secret meetings outside of the Department of Justice and FBI with high-level FBI officials outside of their normal work atmosphere. These were private meetings that these people were having after hours at some other place, and they would have been talking, of course, about the coup. That's what Ron Johnson is learning. And this informant is giving him very detailed information about the discussions that were had, why these secret meetings happened, who was involved, who was in these meetings, and the fact that they're very illegal. So that's a very interesting story. We'll be looking forward to following up on that and finding out what more Ron Johnson is learning. But apparently he's got, I guess for all practical purposes, you could say a whistleblower. He's describing him as an informant. But this is apparently someone who was at least in attendance at one or some of these meetings and knows who was there, what they were talking about, where they were, and these weren't meetings conducted anywhere inside a government building. These were in private places. So, yeah, that's very damning, and we will find out what more Ron Johnson learns. And I think we might learn about some of this stuff even before the election. And of course, we had Lindsey Graham going on Sean Hannity, telling Hannity that he's going to be interviewing Comey before the end of the month. Now, Lindsey Graham is having the same problem that Ron Johnson is having, as I pointed out yesterday. These hearings being done behind closed doors do no good. I mean, if you're an investigator like Durham and you can indict, arrest people, charge people with crimes, then yes, that's exactly what you want to do. But these guys have no prosecutorial power. They only have the power of oversight. And what they need is to be having public hearings. We need these people in public answering questions. And of course they're not going to answer the questions. I'm not stupid. They're going to have lawyers behind them. And when they're asked a question, they're going to turn around and go, yeah, I'm sorry, on the advice of my counsel, I've been advised not to discuss that question. Then they're going to be asked another question. I'm sorry, but I can't comment on that because it's part of an ongoing investigation. I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question because it involves classified material. I mean, this is the type of answers you're going to get from these people. Or if they do answer certain questions, they're going to lie. Because they're certainly not going to sit there and admit their guilt, are they? We need to see this. The public needs to see it. Behind closed doors, I don't know how much good it does. I really don't. I mean, if they could prosecute somebody or charge somebody, then that'd make sense. But they can't. They should be public hearings. Bring Comey in front of the public. Bring McCabe in front of the public. Bring Brennan in front of the public and ask them these questions. Ask them about that secret society now that Johnson actually knows who was there. And now that we know that all 4 FISAs were fraudulent. And now that we know that they knew that Carter Page was working for the CIA 2 months before they even got the first FISA warrant. We know about how they set up Michael Flynn. And I think it's safe to say that we can prove that they set up Papadopoulos as well, or certainly tried to. We know a lot of things that we didn't know the last time these guys testified. And I mean, the list of people that are on Ron Johnson's list, I mean, it's solid, man. I mean, it's 41 of the absolute who's who of the Spygate coup plot. I mean, it's all of them. But yes, I don't expect Comey now to say anything, especially because he's going to be behind closed doors. But he's not going to tell Lindsey Graham anything. He's going to be there with a lawyer, and he's going to tell Lindsey Graham, I can't answer that question on the advice of my counsel. Oh, that's classified. And I no longer have a clearance, so I can't even talk about it. That's what you're going to get from Comey. Nothing. So if you're going to get nothing out of him, put him in front of a live audience. At least we can all watch him refuse to answer questions and act like a guilty man. That's what we want to see. If you put these people out in front of the TV cameras, we can all see that they are guilty. They're not going to admit their guilt. They're not going to answer your questions. But their refusal to answer questions will tell people, well, they must be guilty. Otherwise, he'd answer the question. Public hearings. Lindsey Graham's got the same problem with Comey. Whoop-de-doo. Now, Lindsey Graham is caught up in a very, very tough re-election fight. In fact, they're showing the polls, if you believe the polls, and I really don't. I think Lindsey Graham will probably win. But so he's supposedly in a dead heat with his Democratic opponent for that Senate seat in South Carolina. And that when that race started to tighten, and when Graham thought there was a chance he could lose that seat, that's when he really turned up the heat and started going at the last minute to try to have these hearings and do all this stuff he's been promising now for years. They never got around to it. Only when he saw he was in political trouble, and he knows he's in political trouble because he doesn't see hardcore Trump support for him in South Carolina. Other senators and congressmen and governors who support Trump have got all the Trump supporters backing them. But Lindsey Graham looks around and the Trump supporters ain't around. They're not supporting Graham because he hasn't supported Trump. And they know what a snake in the grass he is. So now, to try to get those enthusiastic Trump supporters to come out and support him and keep him in office, he's now going to pretend that he's the ultimate crime fighter and is going to get to the bottom of things. He had over 3 years to get to the bottom of things. He's a fraud. And the people of South Carolina know it. The sad thing is that if he loses, we get a Democrat in the Senate. And that's tight in the Senate right now. We can't afford to lose that son of a bitch in the Senate, as bad as I hate to say it. As bad as I would like to see Lindsey Graham gone, he's still better than any Democrat who will follow the Democrat line and sign on to impeachment. It's Lindsey Graham or a Democrat. That's our choices. We have no choice but to hold our nose and hope to God Lindsey Graham wins. But he ain't going to get to the bottom of shit. It's all election year politics for Lindsey Graham. And if he wins that Senate seat, he'll go back to the old Lindsey Graham. No confidence in him whatsoever, but as bad as he is, he's still better than a Democrat. What I'd like to see is someone actually challenge him and primary his ass. A real conservative, a real Trump supporter. But he's got that military-industrial complex money locked up. He is, in fact, Lindsey Graham is essentially a salesman for the military-industrial complex. And he's delivered trillions of dollars. And that's why they'll make sure to protect him as much as they can. So, it's a lot about election year politics for Lindsey Graham. That's why he suddenly is pretending that he's got a pair of balls. He really doesn't. Don't be fooled by this swine. But this swine is still better than the alternative. And that's pathetic. DOJ spokesperson saying that yes, the Department of Justice is looking into the wiped phones by the Mueller team. Would not go into any more detail other than to say that yes, the DOJ is looking into the wiped phones. That's good. They look into a lot of things, don't they? I don't know how many of you are familiar with the website Undercover DC or Jim Casey, and I believe Casey might be a former intelligence officer. And he did kind of a pretty good deep dive on that Joseph Misfit 302 that was released, and I highly recommend you read it. It's very good. He gives his analysis, having been in that position where he, worked for the intelligence agencies, and he knows the types of questions that you would ask people and the type of techniques you would use to get truths. And he points out all the problems with the interview of Mifsud and how there were so many things that should have been asked that weren't asked, the whole way it was handled. Clearly something was off about that whole Mifsud interview. And he points many of these things out. It's a very good article. If you have not read it, you can just go to, just type in Jim Casey DC Underground, and you should see on his site, you should see the link. Read that story. It's quite good. But there's one thing he says when he gets down to the last paragraph of that story. He says that there is speculation that Durham has interviewed Mifsud. There is speculation that Durham has interviewed Mifsud. It's news to me. I mean, I cover this story pretty damn close, and I cover Mifsud very, very closely. I look into Mifsud every day. And Durham. Every day. We know that they went to Italy. We know that they acquired 2 phones that belonged to Mifsud. We know that they, we suspect, it's strongly suspected by the one of the Italian newspapers reported that they had spoken to Stephen Rowe, who is, of course, this longtime friend and former business associate of Mifsud. He's the one who did that interview with Mifsud, the audio interview that they played for Durham and Barr. And so there's pretty good reason to believe that the Barr and Durham did speak with Rowe, Stephen Rowe. And he's not in hiding. In fact, he co-authored a book with a French journalist about Mifsud, where they say that he works for Western intelligence. So Rowe knows a lot about Mifsud. So if Barr and Durham interviewed Rowe, they probably learned a hell of a lot about Mifsud. And we know that Rowe is what he said in the past and what's in that book, that he worked with Western intelligence and really has no Russia connections. Rowe would know. His wife is Russian. He travels to Russia a lot. He has investments there. His wife has businesses there. He does know Russian government officials. He does. Not Mifsud. Mifsud's a nobody in Russia. Rowe has got some fairly high-powered friends. His wife is fairly wealthy, has a string of businesses there, is Russian. But as far as interviewing Mifsud personally, I've not heard that. I know they'd like to. So I don't know where Jim Casey is. He doesn't source that and say where he heard that speculation, because he says it has been speculated, and I'm wondering by who. Maybe he's talking about the Italian press. I don't know who. He doesn't give a source. But, if in fact Durham or someone working for Durham has interviewed Mifsud, it'd be interesting to know whether or not he lied to them as well, or whether he came clean. Could be very interesting what we learned from the Durham investigation. You know, I think ultimately they will get to the bottom of that. As I said before a couple days ago, you know, if the FBI wants to find you, they're going to find you, especially if you are in a friendly country. Now, if you're in North Korea or you're in Iran or you're in China, no, probably not going to be able to get to you, or even Russia. But that's not where Mifsud is. He's either being hidden somewhere in Italy, somewhere in the Mediterranean, maybe Greece or somewhere, or possibly even in London. Someone's hiding him. Someone knows where he's at. And you can't stay holed up underground forever. And if you want to find someone, especially they got 2 of his phones. He has a daughter. He has friends, including Mr. Rowe. If there's anybody Mifsud would turn to, it would be Mr. Rowe, Stephen Rowe. So it's possible that they've already interviewed Mifsud, and if not, I think it's possible, especially if this investigation continues on after the election and into the new year, that at some point they are going to get their hands on Mifsud. If they want to find him, I'm certain they can. As long as he's alive. And I believe he is. If they want to find Mifsud, I'm sure they can. And he's key, like I said. He's a key, absolute key. As long as he tells the truth. He's not much value to you if he lies to you, though. I think ultimately, though, what's just as good as Mifsud, and what you'd probably rather get before you get Mifsud, is if you could get the guy who put Mifsud into the game. And that's got to be someone in one of the intelligence agencies. It's got to be. Either someone in London, someone maybe CIA, maybe part of Brennan's task force. Someone put Mifsud up to dropping the ticking time bomb on Papadopoulos. Someone did that. Mifsud just didn't do that on his own. There would have been no reason for Mifsud to do that. Mifsud dropped this ticking time bomb on Papadopoulos because someone told him to. And that would be someone who would be part of the coup. Brennan and somebody fairly high level. Maybe Brennan Clapper, could be Comey. We're not, Mifsud appears to be kind of a guy who does work for quite a few of these Western intelligence agencies. I think he's probably done work for Italy, for the UK, probably maybe for the US, Australia, who knows? But someone knows. Someone knows who put Mifsud into the game. If you can get that person, and I think Halper might know that, maybe Downer would know that, maybe Gina Haspel would know that. Someone knows it. Brennan probably knows it. Comey probably knows it. Maybe Priestap knows it. Some people know, not just one person, some people know who put Mifsud into the game. So that's who you want to get the information from first. The person who actually put him in the game. Then you go find Mifsud. And you ask him about what he did. And then when he lies to you and says, well, I didn't tell Papadopoulos anything, just like I told the FBI. I didn't say anything to him about that. And then you look at him and go, well, we interviewed so-and-so, the guy who put you into the game, and he told us something different. Now you're lying to us. We can have you extradited and charge you. But what we'd much rather do is just have you tell the truth and become a witness. So we're going to ask you again. We know who put you into the game. You want to confirm that? Or do you want to call him a liar? And do you want to work for us, or do you want to go to jail? That's pretty much how you handle that. And I hope that's what Durham's doing. If I couldn't find Mifsud, I'd give it a reasonable time period to find him, a year maybe. If I couldn't find him in a year, and I'm not so sure they couldn't do that if they really wanted to, then I'd be definitely looking for the guy. Someone put him in the game. Someone who's part of the coup plot, and someone very high level. Probably on the intelligence side. I would get that person to come clean, and then I would absolutely go find Mifsud. Put out the APB, and I would lean on people if I had to. Alrighty, that's what I got. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back next time there's more news. See you. Bye.